Security challenges, particularly the rise of Boko Haram, tested his administration's resilience. In 2015, Nigeria witnessed a historic moment, the first democratic transition when incumbent president lost an election. His administration faced economic recessions, but also implemented social investment programs and infrastructure projects. Tinubu's administration has prioritized economic reforms, including the removal of fuel subsidies and exchange rate unification. His policies have sparked debate, with some praising his bold moves while others express concerns over economic hardship. Looking at this journey, what lessons can Nigerians take from our democratic experience? We're going to look at the military rulership up until now and its impact, especially on democracy. Is democracy what Nigerians truly need? But anyway, joining us to my left, I do have the Chairman, ADC Lagos State, Mr. George Ashiru. He's here with us live. Thank you so much for being here this morning.
My pleasure.
And of course, we do have a fiery analyst, one who, according to many who have watched you, they say he spits facts and is always ready to defend what he says. Anyway, we do have Mr. Dr. John who's here with us as well. Thank you so much. First of all, we're going to say that we're expecting to hear the presidential speech, which is the norm that we always get. Before we go to the nitty-gritty of our conversation. But no presidential speech. Is this something that... Yes. It's going to be done in the joint session, but is this something that you're used to?
I don't think it matters really, obviously from the point of view of some of us who already have a position made concerning the style of governance of the president and the party in power. So whether they say, they will repeat the same thing that we've heard on October 1 and May 29, it will be a long list of all the things that we have done. And it's just like asking a parent to talk about their parenting style. They will say all the wonderful things they're doing for their children, but the children will come back and tell you, but you're a bad parent. The children will tell you, we have heard it. You said it when we were 8, you said it when you were 20. You always say you're a good parent, you sent us to school, you did this. But what is important to us as children, you never listened, you didn't ask, and you didn't solve the problem. So we're not likely to hear anything different from all of the cacophony of the things we've been hearing from government. I do say that we should not forget that the most important reason we're celebrating June 12th is June 1993. It's not about the current administration. It's about some people that fought so that the military could step aside. So what did they do to give us this very long stretch of democracy we're having? We need to go and find that formula, because the purpose for which they fought for, we have to ask ourselves, are we enjoying it or are we enduring it? Let me just leave that for now.
That reminds me of the line in the former national anthem that says, the labor of our heroes past shall never be in vain. Maybe I should ask Mr. John, do you think that the labor of our heroes past are in vain? Some argue that it is. Some say, no, we're still in it's a journey, so it probably isn't.
Okay, I think it's actually a journey, and it must be made clear that we might not have arrived at where we want to be. We might not have got the kind of leadership that we desire as a nation, but it's also a truism that we'll continue to grow as a nation. One of the very beautiful things about democracy is the fact that it's a government of conversation. We'll continue to point government to the right direction, and we'll continue to elicit interest within the community for people to have interest in how they are governed. I think one major issue that has happened between 1999 and now that I'll quickly touch on is the fact that people have lost hope in the process of government, and as a result of that, we'll continue to see a similar style over the years, because there's not been a deliberate effort to bring in new ideas, new ideology into government, because people, they can't come to your house to bring you out. You have to, first of all, show interest. But what our democratic experience has taught the people is to lose interest in the process of governance. So we are growing, we are coming up, and I believe that with the interest that I've seen within the community since 2023, if we can continue to elicit that kind of interest, we will do better in the future.
Okay, so I think let's now set the groundwork. We'll come back to 1993, but I think that we should start from the beginning, the official beginning of Nigeria's democracy, which is 1999. President Olusegun Obasanjo, you think about him, and there are many things that you think about. You think about him clearing our foreign debt, the $18 billion foreign debt. You think about, setting up of EFCC, ICPC. You think about so many positives, but also think about a number of negatives, right? You think about what we're seeing happening in 2025 in terms of emergency rule and suspension of executive elected officials. It's not the first time we're seeing that. We did see that in President Olusegun Obasanjo's time. But let's get your sense, Mr. Ashiru, of the gains that we've maybe consolidated over the years that started from President Olusegun Obasanjo's time in office.
All right. So, well, the democracy that came in with General Olusegun Obasanjo is the Third Republic. So, some of us did enjoy Shagari's period. Some of us were in federal schools during Shagari's period. We enjoyed free, if not completely free education with bursaries. We had train rides from Federal Government College, Kaduna, back to Lagos. We were able to take our passports and go to the airport without having to get a visa as a Commonwealth passport. I could take Naira from here when I was doing my A-levels in the UK and change it at the airport. I could pay my school fees by myself. My parents would send me at the age of 16. I'm off on my own, and I would have my school fees in my pocket, and I would pay. And if I needed anything from the central bank, I would get a letter from there. I would come here, central bank would give me a draft in foreign currency. I competed for Nigeria in 1987. I got Federal Military Scholarship, the Lagos State Scholarship. So I'm telling you that the best years of Nigeria are way, way, well behind us. But that's my point. Some of us were born just before the Civil War. So I can give you the longest story of Nigeria transitioning over the years. And you can never, ever compete with the best years of Nigeria of the 70s and 80s. You can't. You can't compete with when dollar was $2 to 1 naira. What do you want to use to compete? People weren't worried about bridges then. People were not worried even about Japan or traveling abroad. My grandmother would go to the UK, and on her way back, she would say, "Take your pounds, give me my naira back," at the airport. Come on. If you don't experience the best as a yardstick, you would think that because we have 20-story high-rise, we're developing. No, that's not how you measure development. It is the parity in comparison of people. The ability of people to wake up one morning and just say, "I want to buy a car," and they can afford it in 3 months. That is what they call economic development. So it's not building big houses, international conference center, which, by the way, I supplied the machine that was used to clean it as far back as 1993, 92. Yes, wow. From the UK, Powered Access Platform. So what do you want to tell me the story? I was there. I was there in 1993. I was almost arrested for one of those that went around shouting that, we will not agree, we will not agree. I was in school in the days of, what's his name, IBB. When that bridge was being built, this Third Milan Bridge, it was still passing from University of Lagos. We used to see it. And we were the ones that confronted the tear gas. So come on, anybody will come and start telling me they are developing. No, it is only when you have those standards you can compare. So unfortunately, a lot of people will see infrastructure and think that's development. If you are going to work on basic infrastructure, go to Ivory Coast, go to Rwanda, go to Nairobi, then we are competing again. You will realize we are not even near the countries whose GDPs are less than that of Lagos State. No, the most important evidence of development anywhere is the ability of the people to afford a sensible lifestyle, HDI. And that is what has been missing. Every single person in power thinks that by building more roads, building more bridges, high-rise centers, then they can point to something visible. But the most important development is the people's development. How can our income per capita be less than it was 40, 50 years ago when other countries in the world is triple? I mean... So at what point did it change and what were the factors? You see, the consistency of everything is based on comparison. So you look at China. China 40 years ago, struggling out of communism. They built their people, the vocational training, technical training, technological training. The people were empowered. They allowed capitalism to thrive. And what has happened? Their GDP has increased. That's why America is fighting them now, because they feel like, from nowhere. Hong Kong, Taipei, that we used to say made in Taiwan. Now made in Taiwan is, hey, it's global. The income per capita of people from Taiwan is over $25,000. It was the same as Nigeria 40 years ago. So what it tells us is that, one, we have a challenge with leaders understanding priority. Two, we have a problem in consistency in policy management. But the most important thing is that we lack knowledge in governance. Because if you understand governance, you will understand the importance of laying good foundations for the future. So when you lay good foundations, the foundation is what we now come to enjoy in the future. But what people do is, I get into power, I have a few projects, bang, bang, bang. Then I will do a ribbon cutting ceremony so that I can go for the next election. And then if I lose, somebody will come in and say, that was his time. Let me now do my own. And then we are repeating nonsense. And that's why we are not growing. We are retrogressing as a nation. Unfortunately, I no longer use infrastructure as a basis of development. If there was a time, I would come back from England and I would look and say, wow, Nigeria is developing. Then I see the poor people are still poorer. Then I get depressed. I see people struggling to parent and I'm thinking, okay, there's something not quite right here. This is really should be the focus. But we have either deliberately kept them poor, but we don't know how to empower people. And I think that is what any government should be looking at now. Not focusing on giving contracts to building bridges, building this, building that, and forgetting what should be the first principles of development, people.
Well, Dr. John, I mean, let's get your take on this. We're looking at the past and coming down to the present. That's what we're looking at right now. What would you say our democracy is missing compared to the military regime? I mean, during the military regime, we've heard Mr. Ashiru break it down, the things that were enjoyed, the things that Nigerians benefited from. And now it's democracy. What is it that we are not benefiting from?
Okay, so I think the major issue with democracy since 1999 is actually a struggle to either rebuild what has been spoiled, because the reality is that a lot of things have actually gone on between 1986 and when democracy returned in 1999. Either a struggle to rebuild what has been damaged or a struggle to win the next election. And when you look at these two, it requires a lot of leadership. And one of the subjects that, I keep laying emphasis on the subject of leadership in Nigeria, it's the concept of traditionalism. Traditionalism is a concept, if you go to the traditional ruler of your community, for example, he expects you, I come from a ruling house, he expects you to drop something. When the Oba of my community comes to my house, he still expects me to drop something. So traditionally, leadership is about taking, not necessarily about giving in Africa. So when we imported this into our practice, either as a pastor or if you go visit your pastor, you are expected to drop something. If he comes meet you, you're also expected to drop something. We imported that into democracy. And even in areas where systems have been built to stop people from taking from government, they still cut corners to actually take from government. So primarily, leadership in democracy or in Africa is about self. And any project, any policy and program that does not support self is not prioritized in government. And I like how Mr. Ashiru put it. You see, for some of us who study leadership, one major gap that we have seen there's no problem with our democracy. There's no problem with even the Nigerian people. We only have a question of leadership. And for you to know, I am one of the few Nigerians by privilege who have traveled throughout 4 sectors of the economy. The way people behave in the private sector was the same way people were behaving when I was in the civil service. The same way people were behaving in the civil service is the same way people were behaving when I was running for office. So you look at all of these things from our political system, you discover that the question mark has always been of leadership. And what is the major problem with leadership? Leadership usually is about suspension of self at the benefit of the society. So anything that puts, I love infrastructure. I am completely against the fact that infrastructure is not growth. I love infrastructure. But one of the things that I have seen in the process of rehearsing what we have done so far in Nigeria is that any major infrastructure you see in Nigeria is still serving the interest of the man who builds it. Either the man is building it because of next election, or the man is building it because the contractor has settled at the end of the day. These are facts that should not be lied about. So the question of our democracy is a general question of our mindset at the moment. Because there's a philosophy that points to the fact that how you do one thing is how you do all things. So our philosophy, our mindset of growth and development of governance and practice at the moment is the fact that leadership is about serving self, and anything that does not serve self is not a priority in the question of leadership.
So how do we then look forward to this change, if the same things that you're talking about, Mr. Ashiru gave us a breakdown of what life was, and in fact, I was looking at you with awe because I can't relate to a number of the things that you said. I did not experience them. I've only heard about them from my parents, uncles, and aunties, and it feels like such a far cry from what the reality is today. If we're saying that over the course of the years, I always make reference to Chinua Achebe's book, the problem, or I think it's the trouble with Nigeria, the problem with Nigeria. Yeah, and in that book, the major thing he talked about was how our major challenge in Nigeria is leadership. And all the things that he complained about, he talked about us having to fix up our house by 2000. And I laughed. When I was reading that part, I said, wow, this is over 20 years later. Imagine what will happen if Chinua Achebe could see where Nigeria is. So what do we need to do differently? Because even the younger people, you say you put younger people in office, people go there and perpetrate the same cycle. So what do we need to change?
Yes, again, it piggies back to what I said about the foundation that was laid. So how do you expect people that were brought up in corruption to understand any other way of leading? If when you were doing your work, you were told to fiddle certain things, that's even to get to university. You know, when you get to university, you're already using something to dub in order to do your project. So you have laid the foundation about how you are going to live your life, just like you said. How you do one thing is how you do others. So if you've never learned how to do things right, you will develop a complex. What's the name of that complex where, you know, some people think they are, you know, they are not what they think they are?
Yeah.
You develop
complex?
No, there's a phrase for it. But that's not even the key thing. Corruption, we know, is the heart of the reason some of the problems we have in this country thrives. So corruption is easy when your focus is on big projects. When your focus is on infrastructure. Like I said, I have no problem with infrastructure. I have a problem with it being your priority. If the people is your priority, it will determine the kind of infrastructure you invest in. So when somebody is building a Atlantic city, and not a single Nigerian can enter the gate of that place, but that land belongs to Nigeria, doesn't that tell you where the priority is? So you are putting billions of Nigeria's resources to build something just for 0.00001% of people. That means you never thought of the people when you are building it. So it is that same selfishness, that cultural self-centeredness that we've had for hundreds of years, where we're used to everybody serving the king and the rulers. We are carrying it. So the democracy we are practicing now is not pure, true democracy. You know, I use one phrase, it may sound insulting to those in power. I say our democracy consists of being given the power to choose our next dictator. We are simply given the power to choose our next ruler, because the person is not representing our interest. Now, I'm a person who is in politics. I'm a political party chairman. I have also worked directly with ministers in government. I've served in government agencies as a result of the development of my career, including when I was in Lagos State as a chairman, even of a sports organization when I was young. I can see over 30, 40 years directly the kind of culture that exists within the public service that encourages what we're having as a problem today. But instead of people to reform the public service, they're focusing on grabbing power. If you want to destroy corruption in Nigeria, go to the public service. There is nothing a politician can steal because he doesn't sign any documents. It's not, no politician in power signs any check. The president doesn't sign check. Governors don't sign checks. Commissioners don't sign checks. They have a director of finance administration that does it. They are the ones who will raise the vouchers. They are the ones that will disburse the money. So are you telling me that money is going in the wrong place and they don't know? But what are they doing about it? As long as I get my cut, I don't care. But if you reform the civil service and you pay people well, and you change the culture of service in the civil service, and they push back against political leaders and say, sir, no, this is wrong, this is against the rule, this is against the law, over a period of time, politicians will know, well, if you go to service, these guys won't give you a chance, because they think about Nigeria first. But back again to what you said, those in public service, those in politics, those in private service, everybody's thinking me. And it's the culture itself started once we imbibe democracy. Democracy has a tendency to individualize service. Military talks about unity. A military cannot win a war if they're not unified. Central command, central thinking, central way of doing things. That is why communist countries have faster development than us. Like China, like Russia, like even Dubai. all those Saudi Arabian countries, where if they have a benevolent ruler, oh God, you will see the evidence in that place. But if they have a terrible ruler, everybody suffers as well. So I think it comes back to the fact that, like he said, and like everybody has said, including Chino Achebe, there's no problem with the landscape of Nigeria. But we have never had a proper method of building leaders who are thinking Nigeria first. Even our young people go online today, the way they curse Nigeria, those same people you want to hand over Nigeria to them? You can't hand over Nigeria to them because there is a foundation that's been laid and Nigeria is a toxic environment. So they will never give their best to Nigeria. As a man who was in sports, back when we were young, when we were told to go and represent this country, we were not thinking of allowance, $100 a day. We were not thinking so. Someone like myself, I was so glad that, oh, I'm going to represent Nigeria, that my grandmother, my mother, my family, they sat together and they prayed for me and they say, wow, government picking. I didn't know scholarship would come after it. I didn't know they would give us 10 million naira each. I didn't know they would do this at what? At 19 or 20. I didn't realize that you have become a figure, that you come out from the airport and they put these gallons on you and they put you on NTA. And subsequent to that, guess what happened? Let me tell you how back what we were doing something right before. That's my point. I'm just saying let's go back to find what we are doing right. I come back from an international event. NTA interviews you. The producer likes what you're doing. He says, why? Please, I need you to come and be presenting this program for us, Youth Scene. I get on television at a young age. And you know those days there was no competition, it was just NTA. So every Sunday evening you will see me all over the country, every Sunday for almost 3 years, presenting Youth Scene as a young leader. I got to meet Nigeria, Nelson Mandela, as a result of that, when he first came to Nigeria. That is somebody purposely building me, right? And modeling me for leadership. Yeah. But somewhere along the line, people just started thinking, instead of me putting George, let me put my son. Instead of me bringing him and then he will get popular, let me bring somebody. That is where we started to mix it up. The politics is designed for self-centeredness. So we need to change the nature of politics. And if we do so, we will get to where we're going. And the only way to change it is for people to vote those who really want to serve them, not simply those who represent their religion, their tribe, those who really want to serve. And you can tell, because out of the abundance of the heart,
the mouth
speaks.
Finally,
I mean, because we're really pressed for time, we have a lot to cover. Thank you so much. But let's also get your final thoughts on this. Looking at the 26 years that we've been in democracy, in comparison to the military rule, what I would like is when everybody says we should never go back to the military rule. That's it, because we're a democratic nation. But what do you make out of our journey so far in 26 years?
Okay, so in 26 years, like I said when I was opening, looking at it very critically, one of the major issues with democracy is the fact that there's no sense of urgency in execution of programs and policy. But I would say with utmost sense of responsibility that I see that our democracy is growing. When we started democracy in 1999, one of the major things, one of the major issues that bedeviled our practice was the fact that when you go out to vote, somebody will just come from the back and take the entire ballot snatching, take the entire ballot and all of that. I shared a story with you the last time I came here of a senator who actually won his primary election and his name came out on the INEC list as the candidate of his party. And the other one didn't do anything. He was just in his house. His name is Lanwo. So when journalists go to him, he said, no, go and meet my campaign manager. In other words, the PDP had a candidate, his name out published on INEC papers and all of that. And there's another man who didn't do anything. He was just in his house. And this man won election. The man that his name came out of the won election. And before this man will leave Ondo State and get to Abuja, the other person had appeared in the National Assembly and has been sworn in as the senator. That is how our democracy was between 1999 and 2000. We may not have got there, but gradually we are moving. And that's why respectable people can actually come out today and say, no matter how terrible these things are, we must be part of it. And you can begin to pinpoint them. Usually, before now, especially in religious organizations, they will have to warn you, don't move near politics. But everybody has suddenly realized now that government is the God that they can see. And they have deliberately they have begun to put in input into the process of government. So I would say we are not where we were supposed to be, but gradually we are going there. And to have Mr. Shitu as chairman of ADC in Lagos, to have a lot of credible people, I believe that the future is still very great. And I do not want people to miss, because what I've seen by my generation, you know, you talked about it, Sai, about when you go on social media, the major mistake we have made is the fact that we have actually misinterpreted people in power to mean our nation. So we do not like the way they behave. And instead of coming out to say we do not like, we just translate that hatred to Nigeria. And you cannot continue to have that toxic environment and want to have development. If somebody does not behave very well, President Tinubu, you have not behaved well. It does not stop the fact that I will go out there, any opportunity I have, I talk about the glory of the nation. We may have gloomy leadership, but there's glory in this nation that as long as we try to get credible people to lead us across all units of leadership. Across all units of leadership. I told you the biggest request of bribe that I've received in my life was not when I was in government, was when I was in the private sector. So I cross all the units of government. We'll continue to have credible people, then at the end of the day,
I mean, you're talking about criticizing individuals and not making it a thing about Nigeria.
It's not about Nigeria.
Unfortunately, there are those who don't believe that if you do that now, it might not be well received. We have many cases.
Out of many,
you know,
one. That one represents what is seen as the standard of what they came out of.
Right.
That's why Nigerians are judged all over the world by virtue of one person's mistake. They assume it's a culture of the nation.
Yes.
So whether we like it or not, the brand and the brandee
is almost inseparable. Exactly. Gentlemen, thank you for your time with us this morning.
It's a pleasure
to have you.
pleasure.
And happy Democracy Day.
Happy Democracy Day.